Hi, I'm Catherine Reid, and coming up next on the St. Paul Forum, I'm talking with Sarah Peters and Piotr Szyhalsk about Northern Spark. That's coming up next on the St. Paul Forum. Hi, I'm Catherine Reid, and welcome to the St. Paul Forum. Today I'm talking with Sarah Peters and Piotr Szyhalsk about Northern Spark. Welcome, Sarah.
Thanks.
Piotr, we're so glad you could be here.
Thank you for having us.
So we've got something really exciting coming up.
Mm-hmm.
It's the third year of Northern Spark, which is a festival. Sarah, why don't you give us sort of a quick overview about
Yeah. Northern Spark is a festival. There's a couple of unique things about Northern Spark. Probably the most unique is that it takes place overnight. We are a dusk to dawn multimedia art and culture festival, and this year we are taking place in Lowertown in St. Paul, which we're very excited about.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
And so the structure of the festival is that northernlights.mn, which is an arts organization here in the Twin Cities, produces the festival in collaboration with 42 cultural partners across the Twin Cities. So that ranges from SPNN to the Children's Museum, to the Science Museum, to Zeitgeist, to the Black Dog Cafe, to Golden's. There's 42. I could go on.
42, yeah.
And we also have a number of Minneapolis partners this year, including the Minneapolis College of Art and Design, and
that's why Peter's here in part.
In part.
He's here as himself,
the small arts
but
community
we'll make
here.
the bridge here. So,
And the Soap Factory, a number of Minneapolis partners that we've worked with in past years that we invited to present projects with us in Lowertown. And those organizations present artist projects at the festival.
okay. Peter, why don't you tell us, this is not your first year working on the festival, and tell us a little bit about what made you interested in being part of Northern Spark.
Yeah, I'm what you would call a Northern Spark veteran.
You're a veteran, okay.
Yeah, I have. I've been participating with each edition of Northern Spark. The
Okay.
first 2 years ago, we put together a large-scale performance project called Empty Words.
Empty Words?
Empty Words, yeah. It was
Okay.
based on John Cage's famous lecture under the same title. And last year, even though I wasn't really working on my own project, I happened to direct a dance performance by Anicha Arts Studio, so sort of a different engagement, but still part of the Northern Spark Festival. And this year we're working on another large-scale project. And I have to say that, to me, from the very beginning, the main point of attraction was this unusual setting, the all-night setting of the festival, and the duration, the 9 hours of continuous performance, was something that I was immediately attracted to.
Wonderful, and it really does capture the imagination. I mean, I think given that we're Scandinavians, it is the era, the period of the long light. I mean, we all just wait for it to come back, and so it feels really Scandinavian to me, and in one layer, sort of that tapping into our Scandinavian roots or understanding of that, one of our cultural heritages. But does it, you know, from your perspective with those names, I mean, you're really evoking some other ideas, I assume.
Well,
Don't know, but-
the model of the festival is inspired by the Nuit Blanche, or White Night, as it's translated from French. And it's a model of a festival that started in Paris, but also happens in St. Petersburg in the north, where exactly you have this summertime moment of white nights, or long daylight hours in the northern part of the globe during the summer. And so there is this nighttime sort of durational idea, as Peter was speaking to. But the other real strong motivation to bring that model to the Twin Cities is that it enables the participation of so many of our cultural organizations here in the city. As I said, our work with dozens of cultural organizations, and ranging from small galleries to major museums to the History Center, to produce their own projects. And the idea is that the city comes alive for one night, in the middle of the night. Galleries open up, they become available at 3 in the morning, and you find art in unexpected places in the Skyway, projected large scale onto the facade of a building down by the river, or in this case, this year, all around the grounds of the Union Depot, which is a major sponsor of the festival, and a container for about 40 of our projects.
Wonderful. And that is just an amazing new jewel for our community. And I know that Northern Lights has had some participation in some of the art at the depot already, correct? It's a part of...
I would say that the major imaginative force behind Northern Spark being in Lowertown this year is that building, the newly renovated Union Depot. Northern Lights received one of the public art commissions from the Ramsey County Regional Rail Authority for a different public art installation. And so back in September, we were going on all of these tours of that building to begin planning for that other project. And our eyes just we'd get really wide every time we were toured around and it wasn't open to the public yet. And we began to imagine how amazing it would be to fill that space up for one night, because it's not at full capacity yet.
Right.
The Amtrak isn't running, and several of the retail tenants that will eventually be there are not there. And so there are these empty rooms that we are going to put art into, interactive participatory art projects for the night.
So, Peter, to talk a little bit about this curiosity that you have. First of all, why don't you tell us just briefly your how you got here? Why you're not just doing this particular one night event. You're a professor at MCAD, and you're also a practicing artist.
Yeah. I am I guess a quintessential mixed media or multimedia artist. So I have been always interested in the kind of artwork that combines different materials, different media, different sort of formal considerations. And so these large-scale performances are in a way, kind of an ideal medium. After the experience of Empty Words 2 years ago, I realized that this open-ended, porous situation that occurred was sort of a medium, a kind of a format that I found myself really interested in, intrigued by, and this year's performance is definitely kind of another step in that direction, working with similar medium, I would say.
So we need to help them know a little bit about what that medium is. What
Right.
does it look like? I mean, you just said to me a few minutes ago that you're partnering with the Public Works to bring in a pile of sand, and that makes me really curious. What's that about?
Yeah, so the medium, if I were to sort of quickly list a range of involved elements, probably the biggest thing is going to be the dirt, the sand, the earth, and we were super excited to have the City of St. Paul Public Works Department volunteer to deliver the several tons of sand to open the piece with. So 9 o'clock sharp, we'll have this spectacular event with the trucks filing in. There's going to be thousands of people at the festival. It's going to be a kind of an unusual situation, and this sort of begins the work, which obviously involves sand, shovels, wheelbarrows, but it also involves 9 hours of live percussive performance. There's cameras and screens and projections. There's live printing, there's printed matter, books, posters, ad hoc voice singing performances. It's a complex event on one hand, but on the other hand, it delivers what I think is a pretty direct and simple sort of idea of poetic celebration of work.
And the theme itself is we are always working?
Well, I brought these posters with me, yeah, because I've been printing these posters as sort of a parallel activity to a number of performances that I've been working on over the years. And so Empty Words had these posters printed on site as well. And I brought this with me because this year's performance actually centers on these issues, and the posters will be printed as well. And I enjoy thinking of the act of printing the posters on site as a kind of a performative experience. It becomes a theater of sorts, a kind of a dance. But at the same time, people who are witnessing the event can walk away with these posters. And in fact, the Empty Words, there was a big line of people lining up, waiting for their poster to be printed. It is a sort of a unique, special situation. And so yeah, the posters are going to be there, but the piece, in a way, celebrates this idea of labor that we're all part of, and in a way, maybe pointing at the idea of the fact that what we used to think of work, the physical work, may no longer be necessarily the way we work these days, and sort of expanding that concept.
It's helping stretch our imaginations about it.
Definitely.
So here he is playing. I mean, we've got so many different levels of activity, and is this particular performance launch, is 9 o'clock the start time?
8:58 p.m. is the
8,
technical. We go
okay.
8:58 p.m. until 5:26 a.m.
And it's a Saturday, June 8th.
Saturday, June 8th. We do that's the Farmer's Almanac sunset and sunrise, and so that's a unique thing to the festival that we've had for the past 3 years. And Piotr's project will be one of many things that begins at that time.
Okay.
We will also have an opening concert by Maida that is sponsored and being organized by TPT and MN Original. And so that will kick things off, along with many of the other projects that will all sort of be up and running at 9 o'clock. And then there are many of the projects during the festival go for the full 8 hours, but there are occasional things that are more performances that are scheduled. There is a troupe of flamenco dancers that work out of Studio Sendero in the Jax building in Lowertown that will be doing 3 different flamenco performances in different locations throughout the festival. Nautilus Music Theater is doing a short piece from a musical theater performance about the Empire Builder train inside the Union Depot waiting room on a stage.
Oh, nice.
There's
But that's
other
a
music.
single performance.
That's
at
a single
specific time.
performance.
And before you keep going with that, I think, because I have unfortunately missed, I will have officially missed every one of them, unfortunately, sadly. But, as I've kind of seen it evolve, it sounds to me like initially, did you have performances that went all night, or as many of them, or is that sort of a shift in the relationship to the audience and knowing how to get the audience to understand how to embrace something so complicated in a sense and yet so freeing at the same time? I mean, it seems like either you can approach it from either perspective.
I would say that it changes a little bit each year. One of the things that we learned after the first year, which was in 2011, which was that not all projects needed to go for the full 8 hours. And so in 2012, we worked a little bit to define the schedule a little bit more, and are doing that again this year, knowing that certain partners, they don't have a project that goes for 8 hours, and if we want them to be able to participate. Nautilus Music Theater did not have an 8-hour musical about the Empire Builder, and so they're doing an excerpt from theirs that is much shorter. Not everybody can perform for 8 hours in a row.
Not everybody is as cool as we are.
Like Piotr can, and that's fine.
Okay.
So,
All right.
it allows more people to participate.
Yes. If you're just joining us, I'm talking with Sarah Peters and Piotr Szyhalski about Northern Spark, which is coming up on June 8th. So there's that notion, like, we accept that the state fair is has a certain number of hours and you're going to go engage with it in whatever way you want to. So in a sense, that festival, when we look at something with so many options, how does the crowd find you, and how do they decide how to interact? And I just want to be reminded, is yours going to be outside the depot?
Yes.
So you're going to be physically in front of the building? Or
Sort of to the side, there's a large flat concrete space that we are going to be
Down near the bus
occupying.
platform.
Yeah.
Okay, near the bus platform. So you say thousands of people come. How do you even know how many come?
Well, a tricky strategy of clicker counts that we don't need to go into. That's not particularly interesting. But to your question about how people find their way through the festival, we do spend a lot of time and energy to organize some extensive resources for the audience. We have a website that details every one of the projects that's organized by presenting partner or by artist name or by time. You can also view a schedule. And as a part of the website, there's a function called My Night, where you can essentially make a shopping list and save which projects you want to go to, and then print that out or bring it with you. And then we also have a mobile app that syncs up with those My Night lists, so you can carry that around over the course of the night and figure out where things are.
Okay.
But one of the things that is different with this year is that the entire festival has a walkable footprint. The northern warehouse down at the edge.
Essentially at the farmer's market.
Essentially at the farmer's market, up to the Minnesota Museum of American Art at 4th and Robert, and then from the Bedlam Theater right across from the depot down through the depot grounds itself is 32 acres of space.
Wow.
And then down to the river, where we have a couple of projects stationed. And so people can get themselves to the festival however they do that: bus, bike, walk, drive, and then wander. So this
once
may
they're
be
sort
the
of-
year of wandering
Yeah,
to
and
discover what's happening.
Someone had told me they were going to come and use their bicycle. This was, I think, in the first year, and it did feel so much more. It felt that when I looked at it, it felt really stretched out to me, or like they were really, really spread out. So this sounds much more contained, and it sounds as if, again, to get back to yours a little bit, because I'd like to hear a little bit more about what's going to happen, what will people, you've described the truck, so they can decide to be part of, they can take a chunk of his 8 hours and explore it, or maybe, and then come back to it, and is that going to be true of several of the larger performances?
Yeah, just to give, I've been sort of giving a couple of examples, but just to give a flavor of a few of the other things that are going on. One of the other larger scale projects that Northern Lights organized is a piece down at the river by Monica Haller, and it's a listening station for the river. So it's something that will also be there for a full 8 hours.
What medium is Monica's work in?
She is an interesting artist who works, again, maybe difficult to pin down. She is trained as a photographer, but does a lot of interactive work. She's done a project for the past several years working with veterans and making books about their story.
Yes, I've seen one.
And
I know her name was really familiar, but I haven't spoken to her
And
yet.
this project is a bit, it's a new direction for her, which is exciting for us to be able to support that as an arts organization. And so she's working with an architect, Molly Reichert, and a sound designer, Jonathan Zorn, to literally listen to the river. They'll have a hydrophone down in the water that will be picking up the sounds of the river. That will be live mixed with other pre-recorded sounds, some from the river in Louisiana. And then you will lay on these deck chairs that have been designed and produced specifically for the project that will be all set out down on Lambert's Landing, so right down close to the river, and they'll have headphones, and you can lay there and listen literally to the river. So that's something you can pop in out of. And then there are other performances or projects that will only be for an hour, and so you either catch it or you don't.
Great. So let's go a little bit, I'd like to talk a little bit more about this big idea that you're exploring, because the theme of work is so relevant to all of us. What is work becoming? So what are you hoping to get at? What's the essence of the project?
I think the biggest and the simplest idea of the project is to think about maybe intellectual effort or work that does not involve physical engagement. And
So this dichotomy between the concept of work as a physical labor, the Ford plant, the
idea of
generation
assembly
of
line,
manufacturing and assembly, or the farm environment.
Being a quintessentially 20th century idea or notion of labor, and in the 21st century, considering, for example, something simple like social media, and the fact that millions of us spend countless hours typing update statuses or notes about what we did this day or who we've seen, or sharing pictures on Facebook or Twitter, and how essentially these activities are, in fact, ways of producing content, which is no different from assembling a car, in a Ford plant. So what's interesting about this is that we're not really paid for that. We're not really even aware of the fact that we're working, but we are actually working for this company.
And the company being
Well, in this
ourselves,
case,
or
it'd be-
being
No.
the Twitter or Facebook or Google?
Well, Facebook recently went public, and it's a multi-billion-dollar company. And the product that that company offers is
We
the
are the
content.
product.
Is the
We
content
are
that
the
we
content
offer.
and the product.
So it's just, thinking about Facebook, for example, it makes it easy to kind of realize, oh, this is in fact the 21st century labor, and we all engage it. And the sentiment conveyed by the poster that we are working all the time has to do with that as well. The fact that you're at work 9 to 5, and then you go home and you're on Facebook, which is kind of like you're still at work, although you don't think of it as work. And there is nuances and kind of I don't know, intriguing boundaries that get dissolved these days. It's hard to tell when you're at work and when you're actually at leisure.
Well, and Seth Godin's work would say that, as Lynch, the revolution is that we can be our own producers. We are not
Yes.
then also necessarily beholden to that employer.
Right.
It's if you look at yourself as the linchpin who can create the new form of work for yourself, that it's also a liberation.
In a way, although
but it's not really. It sounds. I certainly see that we're
Yeah.
working all the time. And I think in our culture, my own opinion is we work way too much. We don't have enough space actually to be creative. But that's a personal opinion. But that seems to be the interplay. And
Definitely.
So are you in this physical aspect of the work? What are you hoping for people to experience when they're
I'm very interested.
physically in the sand, if you will?
Well, this is the sort of framework of the project, that we are making that sort of comparison or that dichotomy present in the piece. So there is this real physical effort, the actual labor of moving this dirt or earth around within the perimeter of the installation. But there's also different kinds of work that present themselves available. There's a reading station, a table with multiple books of the Lazaretto essay that sort of inspired the work, where people can simply sit down, read, and take it in, and engage in sort of softly in the kind of work that doesn't involve their body. The ad hoc vocal performances are also a way of allowing both the performance and the audience to kind of mingle in this act of producing a different kind of value. Even the physical work of moving the sand, to me, metaphorically starts to speak to something more in a very simple way. There's the two large piles of sand. There's two groups of wheelbarrows and shovels, and sand is picked up from one pile and brought to the other, while a similar activity happens in the opposite direction. So for the duration of the 9 hours, you'll see physical work happening with no visible outcome, essentially. The two piles are going to be there at the end of the performance just the same way they were there in the very beginning of the performance.
And are you hoping that after they stay up all night, they'll feel futility? Or are you hoping they feel...
Futility perhaps is one of the concepts, but to me what's important is the realization that if there is no physical outcome, there is some other kind of value being produced. Something else is happening. This is happening for a different reason, and it's that different reason that I'm really interested in, a different kind of quality, different value that stems from what seems as to be a very traditional model of work, but ends up in a very different place, I think.
Wonderful. Yeah. Well, you've definitely made me curious about it. Thank you for getting people interested in this very interesting and very large-scale question. One of the things that just occurs to me that I think you've talked about all these collaborators, it begs the question of the work of putting on this kind of production. So what is the value, how do you express the value of this? Both what does it cost to put on, how many people have to participate in that process, and then how do you measure the value of it to our city and our community?
Measuring the value of something like Northern Spark it's a good question. It's a challenge, and I would say that we do audience surveys and try to put out these metrics and find out who's coming and where they're from, but that the most valuable responses that we've gotten from people are from this open-ended question that we ask in our audience survey, where we ask them, we say, pretend you're at a dinner party with other people who went to Northern Spark, and you're sharing your favorite moments. What would you say? And from that question, we have we've received these wonderful reflections where people say things like, I came to the festival by myself, but I never felt alone. I can't, this community is so creative, and that was all on display. I've been to this, this neighborhood of Minneapolis 100 times, but I've never seen it this way before. There's this sentiment about the city becoming someplace new, enlivened by art. And so how you qualify that or turn that into an economic value, or I don't know, but what we've learned from the past 2 years is that there's this incredible appreciation on the part of our audience for being engaged and delivered an opportunity to do something different that is very social. People come with their friends, or they talk about seeing friends, running into people all night long, or being around a whole bunch of strangers who feel familiar because you're in a common experience
I
together.
really love it that you're saying that people could come alone, because I think that should not be. I would love it if people didn't feel it was a barrier to coming into the city.
I will piggyback on this, and I'll say that to me, that is maybe one of the most important aspects of it. We feel so isolated these days, and everything seems to conspire against us, from television to internet to social media that are, as we are very antisocial. And here we have an opportunity for thousands of people to literally come together and experience art,
Community
culture,
and art, and
which is really our soul, right?
Lovely. We want to make sure that people can find all this information. So Peter, do you have your own website that you promote your work on?
I do.
Okay. That's okay. We'll put
it's
it
an
up.
unusual URL, but it's a lot of my recent projects, since they do one way or the other deal with issues of work or labor. It's called laborcamp.org.
Laborcamp.org.
Indeed, yeah.
Okay, and then they're going to find all this. There's the app, and what else do you want them to know about?
Northernspark.org is a website where you can read about all of the projects. And then I should also say that we produce a paper guidebook that will be available before the festival and at the festival.
Okay, and so they can find those in their local corner bar, and
Yep.
their drugstore, or their
Yep.
whatever. Okay, so and the big message is come out and play.
Come out and have fun.
Yeah, stay up all night.
Stay up all night.
I mean, how many
Adjust your
times?
sleep schedule now, and you'll
And are you all working on that too? Adjusting your sleep, the
Oh, I
night
do.
as
shift?
we can. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's all we have time for. Come back and see us again next week on the forum.